What's up everyone? It's Nicole here from Bake Toujours, and today I'm gonna be going over how I made these lip macarons. Now I promised you guys in the last video on love letter macarons that there was some exciting technique and development with these macs, so I wanted to dedicate an entire video to it. So today I'm finally gonna be going over how I made these lip macarons with Royal Icing Decor. I hope it blows your mind as much as it did mine. So let's get started. Okay, so first, before we get into these lips, on that last video we did, if you recall, we made these adorable love letter macarons, and I used a wet on wet batter technique. So I split my batter up into two and I colored them different colors, and then I piped this red coloring right on top of the pink when it was still wet. So it makes this flesh look, and that's how I achieved this two-tone macaron color. So that was last video. Now on this video, I'm gonna show you guys how to pipe on Royal Icing Decor onto your macarons before they bake. So you save a ton of time at the end after baking, where you don't have to do more decor on top and then let them dry again. And if you're doing mass production, this could save you an hour of your time. So in this video, I'm gonna share with you guys what I learned through my trials on how to successfully pipe on your royal icing onto your macarons before baking. Let's get into it. All right, so the first step you're gonna wanna do is make your royal icing. I prefer to use Chef Master. This is deluxe meringue powder, not to be confused with egg white powder, which I use in my meringue when making macaron batter. This is deluxe meringue powder, and it is great for royal icing or using it as a base when you can't use eggs in your buttercreams or something. So this has directions on the back on how to make royal icing. I suggest following these, or you can get my macaron ebook, and I have a royal icing recipe on the back of that with instructions. I will put the link below to meringue powder on Amazon and my macaron ebook if that interests you in the description of this video. Once you've made your royal icing, make sure you cover it with plastic wrap directly on top of the surface of your royal icing, or else it'll dry out and get crusty. Here I colored my royal icing with the Sugar Art Hot Pink. And remember guys, you can use Bake Toujours at checkout when purchasing the Sugar Art products if you want a 15% off discount. So that I used the hot pink from the Sugar Art in this royal icing and just mixed it in really well. And you can prep that in your piping bag right before you start your macaron batter. I put it in to a piping bag with a #1 Wilton tip. So it's a really small tip here. We don't want our royal icing to take over too much surface area of our macaron. I would suggest either a Wilton 1 or a Wilton 2 for your lip decor. If your royal icing gets too thick, the surface area is just so big that it's gonna take a while to dry and make it so your macarons crack. So you want thin details for your royal icing on macarons. Once your royal icing is prepped and ready to go in a piping bag fitted with a small tip, we can start our macaron batter. Here I'm going to quickly showcase how to make macarons. But if you are new to making macarons and would like a full tutorial and recipe on how to make macs, then I suggest clicking the link above. My Macaron 101 video has all of that and more. So when you start making your macaron batter, we're going to start with our meringue. I'm gonna whip up my egg whites. Once it's nice and foamy, I'm gonna start sprinkling in my granulated sugar mixed with my egg white powder. Once all of my sugar is dissolved in my meringue, that's when I'll add my coloring when I'm using only one color per batch. So here I'm adding red rose from the Sugar Art, And just a little bit goes a long way. This is probably about 1/8 of a teaspoon. I'm gonna mix that in and allow it to incorporate fully. When you put in a powdered coloring, or any coloring for that matter, at this stage and you're still whipping your egg whites, you're going to aerate the color and it's gonna get lighter. If you want it darker, add more at the end, which I will show you guys that I do when I'm mixing in my dries. So here I'm bringing the meringue to stiff peaks, and right before I add in my dries, which is almond flour and confectioner sugar mixed together, I'm gonna add a little bit more of that red rose coloring. Mix this all in to combine, trying hard not to deflate too much while you're mixing in those dries. Once the dries are incorporated, you can start to macaronage or deflate your batter. So you wanna deflate your batter to the right consistency, which is what some people call a lava consistency. What I like to look for is if my batter is flowing at a nice consistent pace off of my spatula and not breaking. Once I get to that stage, you put it in your piping bag and you're ready to start piping. The smaller the tip, the more control you have. And when making these macarons, you definitely want to be able to get that dip of the lips. So I chose a 4mm tip. And now that I am ready to start piping, you can see I have a lip template underneath my silicone mat to ensure that my sizes do not vary. I sent this lip template out in my last newsletter. If you're interested, you can subscribe below for that. So here as I pipe, I'm outlining my lips. I like to exaggerate the definition of that top lip to make sure that I keep the defined look. And then after I go all the way around to make the outline, I just fill it in the circular motion. I did these on a silicone mat, and I also piped them on parchment. I prefer to do shapes like this where I'm using a really small tip to work on parchment. It sounds counterintuitive because parchment doesn't keep shape as well, but parchment is a better conductor of heat and it allows your macaron to rise better and get those taller feet. So in order to ensure good feet, I piped on both just to cover all my bases. So after you've piped your first set of lips, you're going to use your scribe and just even out the batter. And then you're ready to pipe on your royal icing. I discovered that it's better to not let your macarons dry completely and then pipe on the royal icing. It's actually better if your macaron batter is still wet and then you pipe on the royal icing. So here, my macarons are not dried and I'm piping on my royal icing decor. I have to admit, I tried this about 5 times. So at this point, I wasn't hopeful and I could have smoothed out the surfaces of my macarons better. But that being said, this actually did work, so I'm so excited just to share the technique with you guys. So here I'm piping on the royal icing just to outline my lips and make that defined look. So even if my batter gets a little spread out, the royal icing outline makes it look 100 times better. And again, I preferred a small tip, so Wilton 1 or 2 for my royal icing decor. If it's too thick of a tip, it's gonna be way too wet and heavy on your macaron batter and you get a funky looking result. You get macaron feet where your royal icing was. You only need to pipe the royal icing decor on half of your macarons because the other half can be the back of your macarons. So unless you want it two-sided, only do half and you're set to go. Once you've piped on your royal icing decor, you let these rest until they're completely dry. While your macarons are resting, it's a perfect time to knock out your filling. Here I'm using one of my favorites, just a simple, easy peanut butter buttercream. And all you need here is 113 grams of unsalted butter. You want it softened and at room temperature. You want 130 grams of peanut butter. I prefer Skippy or something that doesn't naturally separate. The recipe calls for 100 grams of confectioner sugar and a half of a teaspoon of vanilla extract. This is a very simple, straightforward recipe. Whip up your softened butter till it's nice and fluffy. Add in your 130 grams of peanut butter. Continue to whip up. Add your 100 grams of confectioner sugar until it's dissolved, and then add in your half of a teaspoon of vanilla extract. If you don't use salted peanut butter, I do suggest adding a pinch of salt. This buttercream is quite soft because of that peanut butter consistency, and I lowered the confectioner sugar to go well with a macaron. Once you have your buttercream made, you can pop that into a piping bag and have that ready to fill your macarons once they are out of your oven. So once your macarons have rested completely, I rested mine a little bit longer than my usual, 20 to 25 minutes. I popped in my silicone mat tray at about the 30-minute mark. I still got some cracks. Not all of the macarons showed cracking, but I did get some. So I would wait for that 35 to 40-minute mark, at least in my home where I had a 50% humidity. 35 to 40 minutes seemed to be that sweet spot because that second tray I put in was beautiful, no cracking whatsoever. Once your macarons are completely baked, I suggest letting them cool completely before playing with them. I know it's hard, but let them cool completely, and then you can peel them off of your baking surface and fill. So here I'm filling my lip macarons with peanut butter buttercream. Once you're done sandwiching your macarons together, store them in an airtight container and you can enjoy them 24 to 48 hours after. How cute are these, you guys? I'm obsessed with them. Again, I could have had some nicer lines, some smoother macs, but it worked and that's what I was going for. So other cool ways that you could use this technique are for fine details like writing. If you can see here, hopefully it focuses. On my popcorn, it says movie and it's in pink and it's raised up. I went over it with marker just for added definition, but I love how it's raised up and you can tell that it says movie. If I tried to do this with Macaron Batter, it would spread. So I piped this on before I baked, and it's a pretty cool technique for fine details. I also shared a long time ago on a live that I did this with my daughter's Shopkins Cupcake Queen macarons, and I used royal icing for the sprinkles before I baked, and that worked as well. Again, fine detail. You could also do like little leaves or other type of calligraphy. Things with super fine print will be so cool to add some royal icing decor, and maybe your macaron batter wouldn't be as good for that because it would spread. So that's that on these lip macarons. If you guys have further questions about this technique, drop them down below. I'm still in the early stages of figuring this out, but if I could give you 3 main tips when using royal icing decor before baking, it would be 1, to use a small tip with your decor, 2, to not let your macaron batter dry before piping on your design, and 3, letting them dry completely or resting your macarons after piping on your royal icing an extra amount of time to make sure they are completely dry before baking. Hopefully with those 3 tips, you guys will find success with this technique. If not, do not hesitate to comment down below so we can have a conversation and share with one another what is going on with these finicky cookies. We learn best when we have a community to bounce ideas off of one another, and I hope that's what this channel is for you. So thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please subscribe and hit that bell so you get notifications when I put new content up. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Happy baking. I just made these today, so they're not matured. But the royal icing gives it even more crunch. So it adds a really fun texture. I'll have to report back on my Instagram on how these mature. But thanks so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful rest of your time doing whatever you're doing. And happy baking and eating. Food.